The webinar has started. I love the fact Zoom doesn't give us a jingle on that. It just launches us straight in. So welcome everybody. Very pleased to see everybody here. This is a first of a 4-part series that I'm going to be doing with our friends at TriPad, where we're going to be focusing on a group of recruiters that I think are very much underserved when it comes down to content. And that is essentially recruiters who work on the SMB market space. So in other words, these are small businesses that are growing, may have recruited the first recruiter for the first time. That person comes in and it's blank slate. They've got to build everything from scratch. What does their world look like? We've got a 4-part series for you folks, and that's what we're going to be talking about on each of those. Today, we are going to launch right at the beginning when we think that, okay, how does that person get that job? We think that it's one of the most obvious things to do when you're hiring for a recruiter for the first time is typically get them from a supplier. Or typically, a great agency supplier may in fact even volunteer themselves into the job after they've been working with the business for a long period. So we're going to be talking today about the transition between in-house recruiter to in-house. What is it all about? What are the challenges? How do you handle objections if this is a path you committed to? And what kind of tips and techniques can myself and the panelists on screen here help contribute to everybody? So I hope you're at the right place, folks. If you are, wonderful to see you. I just want to check whether we are live right now. We've got people here. Yes, it looks like we do. A quick bit of housekeeping. Everyone should know about how Zoom works these days. So pretty obvious. If you want to ask a question, make sure you use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. If you want to interact with us or with everyone else, please chat away. Make sure you do the comments in there. We'll get involved there. And of course, we are also multi-streaming this across multiple channels as well. So you should be seeing this on everywhere on TriPad. You should be seeing on the Brain Food page as well as the Brain Food group as well. So hopefully you can join us all there. Let's get some intros in real quick. Make this 10 seconds, folks. Let's go with you, Dan, first. Who are you and what it is you do?
So I'm a solutions consultant at TriPad. So working with SMEs up to 1,000 employees.
Fantastic. Great to see you here. Joey, quick intro. Who are you? What it is you do?
Yeah, I'm Joey Kuxel. I'm Global Talent Acquisition Manager based in Amsterdam for a company called EVBox.
Great stuff. Sam, quick intro.
Solo Prenia, working as contingency recruiter and doing RPO business for small to medium tech companies.
Fantastic. And Chantel, a quick intro.
So I am a talent strategy director from Spinks on Site, part of Nash Squared. Made the transition myself over a decade ago. I now hire agency recruiters and train them as talent managers for my own team.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. So let's talk about this. Big differences between agency recruiting and in-house recruiting. If we just pose that question up there as a sort of a free-floating one, what is the main thing in your mind that tells you, okay, that is different from that experience? Agency versus recruiter, in-house recruiter. What would you think is the main kind of separation between the two? Because from the outside in, it looks the same. And in fact, if you spoke to someone outside of the industry, they don't know the difference. It's only us that work inside that have some sort of clue that they are different. Okay, so what is that one thing? Joey, do you want to give this a shot to kick us off?
Yeah, sure, not a problem. From my head, the agency recruiter is a broad reach with the placement focus, and in-house recruiter is most likely deep focus on the long-term culture line talent. So there's two differences in my opinion, because one is really focused on the finding the placements and place them as soon as possible. In-house needs to align with a lot of different sub teams. So that makes it different from my side.
Yeah, very, very good. It's basically you have more, shall we say, more complicated inputs as to what is good or bad. Whereas as an agent, the main priority is very clear. You've just got to get the placement in, and that's good. Success is easy to measure as an agent, and failure is easy to measure. Whereas in-house, yes, you do need to make the hires, but there's other stuff that you need to think about that isn't just about knocking the candidates in. I think it's similar, actually, almost on it's analogous to working permanently to working in the contract desk. So in other words, contract is even faster in agency side, because you know what, it's like in right, rapid pace. Probably your concern for other matters are very, very low, kind of experience, employer branding, etc. Come on, let's face facts. You don't really care about that you need to get the candidate bums on seats time. You care a lot more if you're a permanent recruiter, because you're placing this person, longer lead time, you care more, you want a repeat customer, etc., etc. And then if you're in-house, you care even more because you're placing a colleague. This person may in fact be turning up. If you're on premise, it may actually be turning up with you. So I think it's kind of similar to that relationship. Okay, how about you, Sam? What are your thoughts on, because you're still kind of operating on both sides to a certain degree, you're oscillating in and out. So I'd be interested to know a little bit more about your thoughts here. What are your thoughts on the big difference here?
What I first wanted to say was, an agency recruiter the best agency recruiter works like an internal recruiter. So they should know the culture. They should hire because they care. They should hire because they do the team. So I think that's why agencies get such a bad name, because they don't hire as if they're in the team. So although you're still shooting for numbers, because at the end you only get paid once you're placed, you should actually do it because you care and you have all the details. But another thing that does stand out for me is marketing. So marketing and how you approach candidates. Obviously from an agency, you're always going, oh, my financial client who's doing this. Whereas if you're working internal, you can go in promoting the business. Promoting the business, you can send the link of the team lead, of the CFO, of whoever it is that they need to see. And I think the selling aspects internally is a lot easier. Let me not lie, a lot easier than compared to an agency. You got me?
There's less hostility internally. I think that's definitely true on the sales side. I remember having so there's a conversation ongoing right now on LinkedIn on this, on how the influencing side is still obviously a significant part of the job. And one of the commentators, I think Andrea Lungulescu at Wayfair, she said, look, you're going to do as much sales in-house as you do externally. I think that's true, but it's a different type of sale. It's influencing, it's relationship building, classic stakeholder management, right? So you got to build stakeholder management. You got to do all of that relationship building long form. You got to be a lot more patient in a way, because you can't just abandon hiring managers. You have to find a way to work with different personality types. Whereas third-party agency, you can choose to drop a client, and oftentimes, that is your capability as a successful business operator, as an agency recruiter, is your ability to select the people you want to work with. But it's much harder to do that once you're internally. So you need to have a different kind of influencing mentality and a different set of skills. But at the same time, you're not doing the same type of door knocking and conversions that you need to do as a third-party agency. I mean, Chantel, you know all about that, right? I mean, when you're encountering and recruiting at scale, these recruiters coming in from agency to in-house, a lot of them will have very, very sharp sales skills. Do you look for that as a plus? Do you think that immediately translates, or do you think, that's a like to have? That's really good for us to know, but we actually need other things as well before we decide to bring this person into the business? Or third option, do you think, we can train? It's a trainable job. It's not about any of the skills.
Yeah, so great question. I think we look for more the ability to influence, and sometimes that comes from the skill set of sales. Sometimes it comes from the skill set of storytelling. Sometimes it comes from being able to understand data and using that to influence. So sales is something we definitely look for, but also what good salespeople indicate is a good drive and urgency and speed. And I do think a lot of the times, if I might get called out here, but taking people from HR into recruitment, sometimes you lose that speed and urgency, whereas agency to internal recruitment, you get that you get that sense of urgency and speed, and that often comes with that sales mentality, because you need the two for it to work.
Big, immediately a bit of controversy here, guys. What are our thoughts on this? And I put it to everyone who's listening. Do you think that in-house recruiters can sometimes lack urgency? Everyone's saying, people nodding here. Folks, if you're watching this, wherever you are, let us know in comments or chat. What do you think? I mean, do you sometimes encounter people that, you know, are a little bit slow, let's say, or seemingly not prepared to get things over the line, or, you know, let's do this mañana, whereas recruiters just have that edge? And it's, by the way, sometimes the same person, they just have different incentives, right? I mean, a recruiter, remember, one of the big differences that drive behavior is the remuneration side. In other words, how are you compensated? And I think probably one of the biggest differences, Joey, that maybe the biggest difference is in fact the comp. In-house recruiter, much higher component is fixed. You might get a small bonus per head, I guess. I mean, some of us might have that. Others don't have that at all. It's like just simply a salary. Whereas I think almost every agency recruiter is still basic here, comp here. So in other words, the compensation is 2, 3, 4, 5 times the size of the basic, even more so. So you can't really survive on the basic salary. You're mega motivated to get those things over the line. I don't know, long time since I've been a recruitment agent. What is the split on fixed versus guaranteed? Just general percentage wise, does anyone want to let me know? Let me know in the chat there. And actually, Chantel, perhaps you're the best person to talk to about this. Do you have any awareness of what the pay scales are on agency side these days?
Well, look, I could have told you the market last year. Obviously, with things in the economy, that has changed slightly. So my finger isn't as on the pulse. But the way that we've helped that transition is understanding what other drivers that they have. So they need to be driven. They need to have that ability to influence. They need to be able to work at speed. Equally, beyond salary and bonus and commission, what else drives you? What are you building? But in answer to your question, last year you were looking at another 30 to 50% on top, but it was an unusual market, right? So tricky one to really see if that's a fair reflection on the landscape. We also here we look to hire senior recruiters as opposed to like junior or mid-level, so that might differ depending on where they are in their career as well.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really interesting thing to think about. So as a recruiter, you're going in, and probably everyone knows this, like you've got to be very, very honest with your own motivation as to the reason why you want to do it. There is going to be maybe even temporarily, probably a reduction of your total compensation, I would say. If you're, I don't know, I mean, I remember back in my agency days, you can earn really well if you do well. And definitely that was actually my biggest number for a fairly long time. And I think when I was working in-house, I don't think I ever reached the agency total comp. So it's not the case that you would out-earn by doing it in-house, even though if you add up the years, you probably would do, in the sense that it's just a more consistent number, because obviously you have a down year in recruiting, your earnings can crash accordingly. But yeah, that's obviously something you got to think about. It's not always about uplift in salary, maybe not even. Like, what are the motivations that cause you to do it?
Sorry, just quickly on that, I would say I would counter that with short term. I would agree, but long term, if you look at where a TA career can take you, whether that's into a CPO, TA director, you can probably then earn more than what you would earn in agency, depending on market. But I think short term, it's not necessarily an instant uplift, but I think long term, career wise, you could then probably earn more money. Yeah,
and I think glory days of tech startup, I think that was definitely on, actually, because you had that huge acceleration, loads of VC money coming in, and to be frank, a lot of people, agency and in-house, who moved into in-house recruiter jobs, they were kind of over promoted and you know, very quickly became a head of or something, simply because there wasn't anybody there to do it. And you could leap several rungs very quickly. Joy, let's go to you. What was the motivator for you when you decided to make the switch? Because you did about 10 years worth of agency work, didn't you, man?
Yes, I did. The reason is kind of career path, and I did want to understand the different landscape of HR. You know, earning good money, yes, back in London, 2006, 2007, 8, you know, is great. But something was, you know, I don't understand the other side of it. And I did want to move into in-house to be able to go to look after, understand the HR system, HR admin, ops, how the landscape was working. That was my big motivation. And I'm glad I did the switch. I truly enjoy it. And I just want to make it one point is, we are not discussing here in-house agencies are better or the recruiters. No, that is not the case. We are discussing here, you know, what is the different responsibilities and what you look after. And Chantal, you mentioned about moving to the high level in-house. Actually, the salaries is going up, but your responsibilities are going way bigger.
Yeah.
You need to look after your you need to look after your team. You got other due diligence. You need to look after the sub teams. You need to understand the process. You need to look after stakeholders. Is you know, your scale of salary goes up with your responsibilities. And from my perspective, I really enjoy what I do right now. And I would suggest everybody to see the different cultures in-house. That will really help you to understand the bigger picture in all HR.
You know what, a really good point, Joey, because even if you're, let's say you stay third party or you prefer to do third party, even having tried in-house, like your knowledge of how to sell to that audience will improve having done the job yourself. Because guess what, these days a lot of significant companies will have some sort of in-house function that you may end up supplying to. It's no longer just the case of, you know what, they don't have a function, therefore agencies can be the sole suppliers in there. Lots of companies do it with both, and in fact, if you talk to any you know, very senior heads of TAs that, you know, run have headcounts of tens of thousands or so, they have a very clear percentage of their vacancies that they know are going to be filled by third-party agencies. So it's not an either-or situation. It might just help you kind of build up your knowledge as to how you sell into it. Sam, let's go to you here, because I think you've got a very unique situation in the sense that you run your own business, but you run it sometimes as a third-party agency, doing supply. Sometimes you're in sort of effectively working as an in-house, like a mini RPO, and sometimes you pop back out again. So I was wondering, sort of from your approach, like what are the things that pull you into an in-house role? Where do you think, okay, actually this would be a good one for me to be in-house, compared to, actually, I want to stay away from this company to that degree and just be on the outside sending candidates in? How do you make that judgment, or does it evolve like that, or is it just more emergent how that relationship kind of comes to be?
I think it's definitely how much leeway you have with the role. So I personally believe that there aren't a lot of good internal recruitment teams, just with regards to things like the application process and feedback and marketing and how they post adverts. So if I can have the freedom to go into a company and help set that up and work with the marketing team to create a better overall recruitment process, then I'm in. Then it's absolutely fabulous. But it's very hard for me personally to go into a company where, for example, I have a friend who went internal and the leaders are toxic. The salaries are below market, and, you know, she could get fired because she's not delivering, but it's almost impossible to deliver. So I think going in and out as a contractor, you also need to be quite picky and know where you can choose your successors.
I think that's happening a lot, isn't it, guys? Where you've got we call it fractional working, or, you know, people who are just a little bit more discerning as to how much commitment they want to put in. Commitment with a small c, by the way. It's not that you don't, I don't mean commitment in a ethical or moral way. I mean in just a distribution of time and resources perspective. Because sometimes there's a company that is difficult to help, and it's one of these where they've got a very fixed idea as to what contribution this person needs to make, and if that is not how you see your approach, then there's little more you can do, and maybe you can help them in some way, but you got to help them in a way in which they I guess they want to be helped. Again, I remember in my agency days, some companies literally just wanted a CV service, and you had to make the decision whether that was you were the supplier for them. Did they want basically a very, very light touch, just send me 5 CVs every day, that kind of approach, or do you withdraw from that customer, depending on your approach and your style. So Dan, let's bring you in on this. You've been listening to all of this sort of recruiter speak to date. What do you think? How does it work from the company's maturation point of view? We're looking at the SMB market space where, the company is a going concern, doing well, but may not be fully functioned in every department. Do you as a supplier of services kind of observe this and start almost doing like a small sort of audit of their internal capability before you think, okay, I need to either step up or step down my approach based on what they can already do themselves?
Yeah, it's all about finding what the challenges are, what the tech stack looks like, because, from some organizations will use agencies and in-house recruitment. Where are the problems? Where are they looking to save money? And the amount of candidates coming through, have they got the software to support that? So I guess that's where I come in, just to find out where the challenges are, what the relationship is with hiring managers, and how they want them involved in the process as well. It's key to their tech stack basically.
Do you know what I think is going to happen here? The shift to remote is obviously going to change it's going to reduce the differences, isn't it, between an agency recruiter and a quote unquote in-house recruiter, because the in-house recruiter might not actually be on premise. So like one of the key differences pre-COVID was that an agency would never be on premise. They would be in their own office sending candidates in and occasionally visiting and all the rest of it, but they wouldn't be sitting inside a client company, whereas an in-house recruiter would be an employee of the company, therefore would be sitting inside a customer site. Now we've shifted to remote. I would say most people that are working in recruitment, probably a third-party agency, definitely working remotely from their customers. And I dare say a lot of in-house recruiters are also working separately as well. Now, is that going to basically blur the boundaries somewhat between, from a hiring manager point of view? What's the difference? I'm getting candidates from a person I don't see. How does that change things? Does it make it easier for that transition to happen? Let's say again, person is moving from agency to in-house. Does it make it easier that we've gone remote? Thoughts on this? Open question to anybody here.
Sorry, Chantal, please go ahead. I apologize. I jumped into it.
From an embedded point of view, so for people who don't know, we go in-house for like short amounts of time, and then we leave once we've done the recruitment. And what we're actually seeing, Hung, is last year and the year before, clients weren't too concerned about us being on site, which was frustrating for us because we like to be on site to influence. However, what we're seeing this year is people are using services like Embedded as a reason to actually bring people back into the office a couple of days a week, just so that they can start that collaborative work again. So it's really interesting, because what I've personally seen in my own lens is actually the transition back to going on site with our clients. So it's been an interesting kind of last 6 months.
This is what Robert is in the chat there has mentioned. Like, there is a pull back to office. I think we can all sense that. We can all read it on the news, and we can kind of see the drumbeat of the media telling us, yes, this is all happening, but we're also sensing it from the company as well. I think most of the C-level are kind of keen to get this roll back to us. Now, what you're saying, very interesting. You said two things really interesting, Chantal. Number one, as an in-house person, or even as a recruiter of any type, it's better to be, your influencing skills are improved by being in physical proximity. I think that's true, isn't it? I mean, can we agree on that? Does anybody disagree on that idea? So if we have already said right at the beginning, one of the biggest skills we care about is influencing, actually maybe we need to rethink a little bit about our commitment to remote, because we love remote, but there's a trade-off in our ability to influence individuals, which may be more prominent for in-house folks. A second thing you mentioned is that the companies are using you as an excuse to get everyone in. So I'm imagining a scenario where they're saying, oh, Chantal is in the office today. You hiring managers also need to be in order to deliver the requirements. Is that the situation?
Yeah, I think we have to be careful with language. I think they're using it as a reason to bring people in. There is like a lot of value for those people to come in and sit with a talent team or people team. But what we're seeing is they want, our clients, our C-suite want to have a narrative for their team to come back in, and they want them to have good reason, and they want them to have good experience. And part of that is actually coming in and working face to face with your talent manager, whether that's internal or embedded, because actually you're going to get better results, you're going to get better quality hires, and hopefully at a quicker speed as well. So they are using it as part of their narrative to bring people back in, which is super useful. It's great for us because we can have bigger impact, which is what we're there for.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Chantal. I mean, as an in-house TA leader, I prefer collaboration. I don't mean people should work 5 days. It's very important. If anybody supports me, third party, any agency, I would rather them to come in, collaborate with our team, because this is all about. If the person is going to help us out, they need to understand the culture. They need to get to know the hiring manager. They need to see the team. They need to ask questions like Dan said. What is our tech stack? And what is the team is doing? It's very, very important. You need to collaborate. Doesn't matter. The agency recruiter, embedded recruiter, they should really merge, because they also need to understand what we're going through behind the doors. They need to understand how the hire process works. It's not just about placing them right away. It's just how the HR ops works when we do send the contracts. These are a lot of different landscape, and people need to learn. I mean, Samantha probably would agree with me on that one. What is the job behind that? I think agency should be with us, which I encourage anybody third party comes in to see what we do so we can collaborate better.
I couldn't agree more. And I must, this whole remote debacle, if you asked me a year ago, I would say you're absolutely nuts for bringing people back into the office. And I'm starting to see the value of people working together in an office, in person, collaborating. And sorry, slightly off topic, but the junior recruiters or junior anyone, they're just not getting the benefit of having senior staff around them. I mean, I can't imagine being a recruiter 20 years ago, God, no, say 10 years ago, and not having senior recruiters around me on the phone, talking, closing deals, listening to the lingo. How does anyone learn? So I think I'm going to jump on the hybrid, let's get to the office model.
Well, don't be shy, Sam. If you want to just go and just like hammer remote, just go ahead and do so. I think let's not use hybrid as a proxy for what you really want to say, which is recruiters back to the office you go. No, but it's a very important point. Very important point, because in recruiting in particular, there's always been that kind of pipelining of young people in. Like, one of the critiques of recruitment as an industry is that the zero barrier to entry, which basically means there's always loads of new people joining the industry. That's a good thing, because we've got loads of new talent coming all the time. But you know what? I think, Sam, you're absolutely right. If I was like back in the day told to work from remote, here's, by the way, recruiters is one of those jobs also that has very little formal training.
Yes.
So almost all the training was informal. Almost all of it was informal. That's at desk, listening to other people have conversations, having a problem, pulling a senior recruiter aside, say, listen, what are your thoughts on this? Boom, all of that information flow is all like unplanned and structured, very little classroom stuff. Now, imagine you had to do that entirely remotely. Wow, I don't think that's possible to do, or you'd have to be an exceptional individual to be able to do that, or you would have to have some previously like very adjacent skills, like maybe you've done telesales before in the past or something like that, which gives you, you know, kind of a decent sort of set of skills to mix out with. But definitely your speed of development, your ramp up time will slow down. So interested in everyone's thoughts on this. If we're honest with ourselves, recruiters love remote, by the way, and it makes sense in a lot of cases. But is there a huge trade-off, particularly for the learning curve for young people coming into the industry? And does it actually slow everyone like massively down? And if so, do we need to compromise, you know?
I mean, to be honest with you, agency side, I can't really make a judge of it because now I live in Netherlands. We got a totally different recruitment concept, agency concept, although still some people does sales and recruiting as well, if they are ZZP'ers, which is freelancers. But generally in Holland, we got salespeople, account managers. They got the business in and they pass it to their team. And they have a team which we like to call recruiters and / sources. They engage with the candidates and they do get in-house training. If you look at the TA in-house in companies, we have to supply that because it's not just about finding the people just not to talk to candidates. It's all about how the system ATS works. You know, if this person connected, how would they put the landscape all together and what is HR ops does. So it's two different areas. Again, it makes a slightly different trainings. Like somebody mentioned on the comments, I agree with Kurt. It says training is very, very different. Depends on the business model.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting because maybe that's one of the ways in which we could evolve it. So what Joey's talking about here is that different cultures, different countries will structure the agency side differently. The model you described, by the way, Joey, is present in the UK, but it's definitely not the norm. I think that most agencies, one person, full cycle, and that may actually be more difficult to do remotely because it's just you got to run the entire thing. Whereas if you split it, then I can imagine a lot of the sourcing could be done remotely because it's a sourcing as a job is pretty focused. It's, you know, here's the requirement. You can kind of just focus on the finding of the candidates, maybe do some candidate qualifications, etc. Whereas the sales is also quite separable. Maybe you could also do that remotely. So maybe when a job gets more complicated and it's like you got to do everything, that's when you need that close proximity. Dan, let's go to you. I mean, different kind of game, but I think similar, you know, on the sales side, on customer success side. I mean, have you had the experience of working in office versus remote? And if so, what's your commentary on that in terms of your learning curve?
Yeah, I think like what Chantel said, you know, if I was new coming into industry, and then it would be very difficult to learn selling software. But I think, you know, having experience selling compliance and HR software for 6 years allows me to work from home remotely. But I certainly think from recruitment point of view, you know, if I was a recruiter, you know, I'd like to be in the office to find out about the team's culture and different hiring manager styles. And yeah, I think if I was a recruiter, I would prefer the hybrid model. But personally in sales and working as a solutions consultant, it allows me to do more meetings and fit more meetings in the day. So yeah, I'm a fully remoter.
Yeah, listen, I think what we're learning about remote here is that it is essentially there's an age, or should we say an experience component to it. And if you're younger, as a proxy for lacking of experience, then generally fully remote is not the optimal case. We know that anyway from how young people or early entry talent, should I say, commentate on what they prefer, and they typically prefer in office for the learning curve reason, the social capital reason, just building a network that's critically important for a recruiter, and also for your career progression. Again, look at your friends that work in banking or they work in law firms or whatever it is. Like you definitely know that they will improve their career prospects if they were in office and knowing people and being around those folks. And there's a huge amount of politics that goes on in career progression. Same thing applies obviously in recruitment agency as well. But you get to a point where maybe you've built your capital and you've built your experience, and in fact everything is a distraction for you, then yeah, remote becomes more efficient. So yeah, we might go into the office as we're younger and then migrate out. So think of ourselves like a tadpole with a life cycle. We are going to inhabit different environments based on where we're at in terms of life cycle. Okay. Let's have a think about some of the common challenges a recruitment agent, a recruiter currently working in an agency that wants to go in-house. What are those challenges? What are the things typically that are going to prevent that move from happening, and how do we solve that? Let's go around the table. Any thoughts? Go with you first, Joey. What do you think is typically going to happen if an agency recruiter comes in and thinks, right, I'm going in-house?
Well, I think if you look at for UK, which I love UK agency, because you request something Friday, you've got people on Monday. I love it. It doesn't work in Netherlands like that. So yeah, I mean, they got a huge transition journey. If they coming in, they need to understand all those concepts, how the things works around the in-house, but definitely add value, how to source, how to engage with the stakeholders. And the rest of it, we can train them to understand the landscape I was keep talking about, our sub-teams and how the dots can connect to each other. But, in-house recruiters is lacking sometimes understanding some recruitment pace in compared to agencies. And I like the agency recruiter can come in, really make the process a lot faster with their skill set. So, it just comes it can work together, but we can all teach them, and a good transaction, sample me, and they can really make a good career out of it and grow in-house.
As a hiring manager, as a leader of a team of recruiters now, Joey, so what kind of questions would you ask a person that was a good recruiter but agency only? I mean, do you is that a yes or no? Do you make an immediate judgment there, or is it a case of, okay, that's a maybe, but we need to qualify these things? What sort of things do you need to really know before you take this person further?
First, I would like to get to know that person, understand. I always make the first meeting with them, not because I should be judged and let them yes or no. It's all about understand, what their perception is, what kind of personality is, because that gives me an indication that I can train this person as long as the right mindset with the right attitude. This is crucial point for me. And second, I'll go a little bit beyond, such as I ask some technical questions as a tech recruiter. I ask very much technical questions and see their sourcing capabilities, understanding in-house as much as the market segments. And last question I would ask them, how do you, get the new trends? How do you enhance your perception and knowledge within the market? And that will help me to make a decision, but I will not make a decision by myself. I will also forward it to my team, previous team, and then they can also give me some input, because it's not just about me. We're a team.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things you said there. There's the domain knowledge. There's the awareness of in-house. So I guess that actually might be the main one for me, is like, does the person actually understand that this is in many respects a similar job, and in other respects very different? Do they understand what they're doing, rather than just say, oh yeah, it's the same kind of recruiting job. I can. So in other words, the expectations have got to be correct, and their ability to source, right? So again, we're talking about, I'm not saying agencies are weaker sources at all. That's not what we're saying, but they have a slightly different relationship candidate side In fact, they can either sometimes be better at delivery on candidates if they are specialized in a vertical. I would actually say a third-party agency would have a much stronger network to call upon. But they can also be weaker on the delivery side if they are a generalist recruiter and didn't, they basically were dependent on, let's say, ad response, or dependent on a wider range of, they never got deeper sourcing skills because of that reason. I was that type of recruiter. I was a very good generalist recruiter because I had good relationship management skills. I was a good business developer, all those types of things. My delivery was okay. But you know what? The delivery was kind of ad dependent to a large degree, and it was a little bit this way. So I was certainly not like a deep technical sourcer, because that's not how I made the money. So yeah, very interesting question indeed. Let's go to you, Sam, and I want you to take it from a different perspective, because you're going in still as a solopreneur. So you're going in sometimes pitching as an internal, or pitching as an RPO, or pitching as an agency. What do you encounter from a buyer of those services? Did you find yourself fielding similar questions or time and again, or what kind of things, objections do you get thrown your way if you decide, okay, you know what, I think an in-house thing is the right thing? Are there any common things that customers or clients typically say?
That's a tough question to answer. But can I just quickly go back to the previous question, because it was a little bit different. Our South African market is very different. So we've got the UK, Netherlands, and South Africa, and our internal TA teams, I believe, is quite behind international standards. So for our agencies, our agency recruiter to move internal, I think it's an easier move. And I think they make a bigger impact, because we see the issues, we see where things could be improved, and we can implement it. Whereas a South Africa agency recruiter going into an international TA team, vastly different. I mean, I saw it myself working for a US company in their TA team, literally light years ahead of South African internal teams. So just to go back to the topic, because we were trying to say like what that gap is, I think for South African recruiters, I think we can do exceptionally well in our market. But working internationally, we've really got to pick up our socks and start upskilling more.
It's actually really interesting observations that, by the way, this panel was put together without particular consideration to the international aspect, but I'm really pleased that it emerged that way, because it's another dimension that we probably don't consider enough to think, you know what, how recruitment operates in terms of different regions is going to be different. The local context in which that industry evolved is going to be different. The practices that are favored or disfavored in one country are going to be different on another. So it's very interesting to hear about that type of perspective. Again, if you're hiring for agencies in-house, for instance, one of the things you got to think about is, okay, where is this person been working in their career? Because that's going to inform you also as to what is conventional behavior for that type of person. Chantal, let's go to you on this. So you're recruiting tons of these agency recruiters in. What is is there any themes that you can kind of look at? Is there anything that kind of you think, wow, this person's got X, Y, Z. I have got a good feeling they're going to work brilliantly as an in-house person. Or this person is ABC, I think they've got a ways to go to do it. Are there any traits or behaviors that fall into those buckets?
Yeah, I think so. So similar to Joey, we do take culture massively into factor. However, our interview process is skills-based hiring. So essentially, we don't look at CV. We look at, during that interview process, we'll look at trying to find those person's strengths and weaknesses, and if they align with what we need, if there's a gap in our business or what we need for future projects. Off the top of my head, the common themes that tend to occur with the dynamic that we build here is adaptability, somebody who can showcase that they can kind of morph themselves again and again and reinvent themselves is super important. With AI coming into the forefront as well, I think that skill set is even more important than ever. Strong stakeholder management skills, and then learning agility. Again, TA recruitment is constantly changing. Technology is kind of superseding all of that as well. And then because we do portfolio work, every client is different. So you need to be able to learn new industries, new technologies, new roles. So you talked about having a specialism going internal. I actually like a generalist because it shows me you can recruit many roles and you're a master of the process that you apply to different business units. So off the top of my head, I'd say they were like the common themes, that and that urgency. Again, like, let me see that throughout the process. That's a super important trait to have.
Yeah, very, very interesting. And the portfolio style actually is probably a little bit closer to agency work. It's almost an in-between state. I remember doing a Brain Food Live on portfolio hiring a couple of weeks ago, and it was all about working with recruiters who worked at VCs. So VCs, obviously, they would have a portfolio of companies they've invested in. Oftentimes, VCs now carry an internal recruiter. The purpose of that recruiter is go in and set up processes and, help founders essentially set recruiting up. Which is kind of like in-house, but there's like 30 companies they have to do that for. So that's sort of like agency. So the portfolio side, I think you're right. Someone who's got a breadth will have that, if you like, fluid intelligence to be able to adapt to different things and not be horrified by it. Okay, let's have a look at sort of what a recruiter should be doing if they are determined. So they've listened to this webinar, they've built their understanding of what in-house is, they want to make that move. What are the steps to do that? How do you do this in a more systematic way? I remember how I did it. I don't think it was systematic. It was simply circumstance. Someone knew me, or someone knew someone else and said, "Oh, you seem to be unemployed. Do you want to come and want some money?" It's like, sure. And then boom, I was in. Let's not rely on that because market isn't. Is there a process system? What kind of things should agency recruiters do now if they want to move in-house? Thoughts on this? Let's go again. We'll go normal route. Let's go to you, Joey. Any thoughts or advice? Joey, you're muted, bro. I think.
Sorry. Yeah. It's a very good question. At the moment, I would suggest keep the relationship with every clients. And if you need to move, I would say on the application process, try to understand the navigation of that corporate culture or startup or scale up. And then really push your sourcing and relationship skills on that one. And ratios is very, very important. That will help for a criteria. And then just make sure you want to move in and why you're moving to in-house recruitment. Just make it very clear to yourself, because salaries, we were discussing it, it's not the same salary as in-house. Just make it very, very clear. It's not the same. And the hours are actually, I don't know which one is the worst. Is it recruitment or in-house? Can change, vary in any time. So you really need to do diligence. Is that what you wanted to? And then make a decision. Step is easy, there's a huge community. You can connect with the talent acquisition people out there and you can engage with them and push for referral. If you know each other, referral is the best way to get hired. Best way to get hired. Applications always work, of course, awesome. Create your network and get a referral in. That will really help you to get somewhere from my perspective.
Let me underline a few of those things. Thanks for that, Joey. Basically, it is maintaining your client connections, deepen those client connections, because I think it probably is still the optimal way to do it. Because I think if you do a great job with the customer, it's not outrageous that they say, hey, listen, what you're doing, Joey, come work with us. We're paying your employer this amount, and we could pay you this amount, come and work with us full time. I think that's still a very legit way to do it. And that's kind of like a no competition way to do it as well, folks. You've already done the interviewing, right? You've done the delivery, you've done the assessment. There's no more recruiting process to go through. You've got the job. So bed down on all of the customers you've interacted with, you dealt with. That's one of the big challenges and approaches that you've got. Okay, Sam, how about you? Bit of advice for an agency recruiter that wants to make the move. What have you learned in your journey so far?
There's power in your candidate relationships. Most of my contracts where I've gone internal have been developers that I've placed at companies, and they've remembered me and said that they should pull me in. So I think as much as it is client relationships, we talk to more candidates. So don't forget to hone in on those. I've also done 1 or 2 TA courses. I don't know if it's incredibly valuable, but for a South African, it does give you a nice international outlook of how people view TA compared to us. I think ours is still very simple. You do South Africa down, Sam. You're too modest, I think. But you actually mentioned something really important, like getting involved in things like criteria courses, sort of learning spaces. That's really good for 2 reasons. Not only is it knowledge transfer, you get actually more information, but you also have the opportunity to connect with other people in the space. Like oftentimes you're doing workshops, for instance, you're doing a roundtables, you're even like coming on board on panels like this, whether you're on screen or where you're in the chat or whatever. You've actually got other people that are doing this collaboratively. That's a great way to break into these community spaces. And in fact, again, there's lots of channels out there that do this. I mean, you guys, hopefully you all know about Brain Food Live on Fridays. That's got hundreds of people watching it. Like the chat stream's going crazy all the time. If you're an agency recruiter, that's a great place to sit, learn from everyone else, go and connect with people. That's going to help you kind of move the network in the direction of in-house, if that's what you wanted to do. Go on, Sam, you say something, I think? Yes, I do. Just to defend myself. So internal teams, you need to have like your I think it's your DEI departments, where in South Africa we don't have to, because we've got our BEE, which is a law in South Africa. So there's a lot of things internationally that you've got to implement, which we don't have to. So I'm not saying we're simpler recruiters, we just don't have as many laws as international companies.
No, I think that's actually important in the sense that every single, like where you learn your recruiting will bring you different skills and different exposures. There's obviously a tremendous overlap because fundamentally the job may be very similar, but it will be a different flavor of work that you'll be doing based on context. Okay, Chantel, last word to you. What things should a agency recruiter be doing if they wanted to move in-house?
You stole mine. I was going to say we're extremely community driven. So to not copy you, I would say the other thing I would look at doing is take a look at the services and industries that are more open to skill-based hiring, as opposed to just looking at a CV and going, had they gone internal before? Look at companies who have good training, like have a good infrastructure to help support you with that transition. That for me, that first step is really important to set you up for success, and then you can go on and be, a full-time internal person if you choose to be.
That's really, really good advice. Look at companies that care more about competencies and skills versus experience alone, because there are a lot of companies that will rule out agency recruiters without any in-house experience. They'll just say, look, you haven't got it, we can't train you, or we don't have any faith in our ability to bring you to to this to do the domain transfer. Great. Don't waste your time emailing or applying to those companies. Look at companies that talk about skills-based hiring. Look at the ones that have committed to it in some way or have structured their assessment process focused on skills assessments. That is your better option. Folks, I'm going to leave it with a final thought on this. I personally don't think it's a good idea to spend a lot of time applying for jobs that you see. If you're an agency person looking at in-house and you're applying jobs, I don't think that's a good spend of time, particularly in this market. 12, 18 months or so ago, I think, yeah, absolutely, give it a shot. You got a chance. But now the market has shifted, particularly for in-house in tech, where was previously a lot of jobs. We've lost a lot of people on the market. Of course, there's a lot of competition. So I think what will happen if you're an agency person applying to those jobs, you're going to be overwhelmed by competition, number one, but you're also going to be competing with people that have probably got more comparable experience straight away. So the techniques we talked about earlier, building on your network, leaning on your customer base, getting candidate referrals, examining organizations that have different commitments to how they assess. That is a better way to get forward. And last but not least, get involved in the community and build your profile, build your social capital there. Then I think you've got a good shot. Okay, folks, we're running out of time. In fact, we're already over time. I see people are saying this has been a great conversation. I think there's so many more legs to it. We're going to be back. We've got a bit of a summer break, but we're going to be back in July and 19th, so just a month away. We've got the second episode. We're going to be talking about how to optimize your recruitment tech stack. So in other words, let's imagine you're a recruiter that has joined this company for the first time, and you've got to be the person actually building the tech stack from scratch. What is the ATS? What is the sourcing tools? What is the ad distribution channels? What assessment technology do you need to be using? Do they need to talk to each other? What does it mean when AI is here? All of those things, that's what we're going to be talking about on the 19th. So if you're interested in that, look out for the next event. If you're watching this, by the way, on the Tripad company page, it will be played there. So make sure you follow the Tripad company page, and it will be played out there. But otherwise, watch out for an email from the guys there, and we'll let you know basically when that next show is. So thanks everyone for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you to our wonderful guests, Samantha Lee Hayward, Joey Coxall, Chantel Jones, and Dan Sutcliffe. Great to see you all. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Yeah.